song titled We Were, which is a blatant rip-off.
Wait, yeah, is this is this just some type of parody or something?
Of the first One Piece opening, a spread where Luffy proves this exact point by eating Nami's.
Hey! Nah. I know, boy. I know these One Piece fans were drooling when they see this.
Check.
Got 56 facts you didn't know about Luffy. We are currently on Drum Island arc. So I'm watching the show.
Luffy got the X scar on his chest? Because a lot of people assume it was during the time skip with Ray Lee, but we actually saw Luffy getting this scar with those videos very soon. It was given to him by Admiral Akainu at Marineford, who pierced straight through Jinbei and struck Luffy in the chest, resulting in his gaping X wound. Kind of curious as to why Jinbei doesn't have a scar, but we'll put that aside for now. The anime makes it much more clear than the manga, but that is the mystery of Luffy's scar solved. Now here's 55 more things that you probably didn't know about Luffy. Luffy is currently the greatest haki user in the series, as he is the only known character in the series who has mastered advanced observation, armament, and conqueror's haki. Not even characters like Big Mom and Kaido had all three. Luffy is just that ridiculous. But it gets crazier because Luffy holds several world records in the series, being the youngest person to cross the billion-berry bounty mark, as well as being by far the youngest person to ever become one of the 4 emperors. The previous record holder was Shanks, who became an emperor when he was 33. 19. But in addition to that, Luffy holds a real-life Guinness World Record, or more accurately, One Piece does, as it is the most printed comic book series by a single author. But look, we're just gonna count the record as Luffy's. And because he's quite the overachiever, Luffy is weirdly simultaneously the first Devil Fruit user, the first Paramecia user, Zoan user, and mythical Devil Fruit user introduced in the series.
First Devil Fruit user? Wait, like he the first person to eat a Devil Fruit? What do you mean by that?
With that said, Luffy does have his own Devil Fruit limits, as according to series author Eiichiro Oda, Luffy can only stretch up to a maximum distance of 72
first Devil Fruit user
a
showed on the show.
Measurement that has no real-world translation as of yet, but a limit that we did see Luffy reach when he was imprisoned on Whole Cake Island, stretching his arms up to the breaking point that is allegedly 72 Gomu Gomus long. And speaking of arms, Luffy's original Jolly Roger from the Romance Dawn prototypes featured both of his arms acting as crossbones. Although, to be honest, the first time I saw this, I thought I was looking at 2 forks. Also, in the very first Romance Dawn one-shot, Luffy was almost absurdly intelligent. Reading his dialogue is so weird because I'm just sitting there nodding and going, that is very well reasoned, Luffy, and I don't like it. This isn't what you are. But for the final version of One Piece, Oda dumbed Luffy down to the point where he quite literally does not think. In fact, it's a very deliberate decision from Oda to almost never show Luffy
main
with
character
a
is.
The reasoning being that Luffy kind of
bypasses
the whole thinking process and uses his mouth as a typical person would use their brain. Which leads to the fact that you've all probably heard before, being that Luffy's birthday is on May 5th, being Children's Day in Japan. But this isn't some stock standard boring Luffy facts list. No, we're going deeper on this one. Because did you know that his birthday is also referenced in Luffy's birth year being 1505? The 2 5s being a reference to the 5th of May or the 5th of the 5th. Furthermore, Luffy also shares his birthday with fake Luffy, also known as Damaro Black. And while Luffy being born on Children's Day is quite innocent and heartwarming, Damaro Black being associated with children in any way, shape, or form is just a massive red flag. Although I do have to admit that Damaro Black has quite a phenomenal singing voice. And a single has been legitimately released of his, quote, original song titled We Were, which is a blatant rip-off.
Wait, yeah, is this... Is this just some type of parody or something?
Of the first One Piece opening, We Are. Do yourself a favor and look it up. It is painfully beautiful. However, the real Luffy is also a hobby singer himself, having written lyrics to his own original work titled The Moron Song, where he makes fun of everyone around the world. The song has since gone on to become a fan favorite, and it has 4 official verses, each making fun of people from the north, the south, the east, and the west respectively. Well, not respectively, actually. That's the whole point of the song. And some of those disrespected people may live on Fishman Island, where you may remember that a major plot point was Luffy having a rare blood type being F. However, in reality, this is the second most common type in the series from what we know. Although funnily enough, apart from Jinbei, the only Fishman Island characters who shared the F typing were Hody Jones, Daruma, and Wadatsumi. So basically half the new Fishman pirates. And I guess they could have forcibly harvested their blood, but the Jinbei solution worked out pretty well. Luffy does have something of an affinity for water though, at least if you watch the anime, because there Yasop claimed that Luffy was a fantastic swimmer. No such such claim was ever made in the manga.
What?
But I'd believe it because even as a child, Luffy was a pretty athletic dude. So much so that he served as inspiration for real-life athletes at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. With Greece's this guy, I'm not going to say his name because I'm just going to butcher it, but he struck Luffy's iconic gear second pose before going on to win gold in the long jump. And Italian athlete Massimo Stano taking things a step further by mimicking Luffy's gear third pose after winning the 20-kilometer walking race. And just to prove that this isn't just some crazy thumb-biting coincidence, here's a picture of Massimo geeking out over a Luffy statue in the Mugiwara store. However, the greatest Luffy statue is located in Kumamoto, Oda's hometown. And unfortunately, Kumamoto was struck pretty hard by a series of earthquakes. But in response, Oda donated 800 million yen to reconstruction efforts, after which point the town erected this glorious golden Luffy statue. And
oh man, Luffy got it. Luffy got it, man. Zoro got a statue too?
And actually now has statues of all of the Straw Hats scattered across the region. Luffy's reach extends far beyond Japan though, and even all the way onto the chest.
One Piece got Japan on lock.
Writer-director Taika Waititi, who can often be spotted in his now trademark blue Luffy sweater, which is often blurred out for various copyright reasons, but that face is instantly recognizable no matter how blurry it is or no matter whose chest it resides on. Weirdly enough, there is some internal censorship regarding Luffy's appearances though, with Oda insisting that Luffy can never appear on the cover of any magazine that isn't Weekly Shonen Jump, which is a bit odd because One Piece has a ton of spin-off series that do appear in other magazines. Other magazines also run by Shueisha no less, and yet Luffy is still not allowed to appear on the cover. The one time this policy was technically broken is when Luffy appeared on the cover of men's fashion magazine Nonno, which broke new ground as the first anime and or manga character to do so. Luffy, what an icon. Luffy is actually so iconic that his trademark Jolly Roger appears in the final chapter of Naruto.
Wait, One Piece is the most popular anime in Japan, right? I'm bugging. It's the most popular anime in Japan. Like ever.
Meanwhile, Naruto himself also appears on the cover of chapter 766 of One Piece. Oda and Kishimoto respected each other so much that when Naruto ended, they each did little tributes to each other. It was very sweet. But Luffy's Iconism also extends to episode 128 of Inuyasha, when a student cosplayed him in the background. And look, I just find this crazy because I was watching Inuyasha in high school, which means One Piece is older. Probably the most prolific Luffy cosplay comes from Gintama though, a series that makes reference to One Piece so much that it can often be mistaken for One Piece itself. But look, Luffy himself also engages in a bit of the old cosplay, with a favorite of mine being when he dressed up as both Mario and Luigi for One Piece Super Grand Battle X. He looks oddly good. Because Luffy himself does enjoy dress up, sometimes quite literally, as he once wore a delightsome dress for One Piece Film Gold, which resulted in some equally as delightsome fan art. Although Luffy's biggest dress to date is still Dressrosa, which features a very sneaky Luffy reference that you may not have noticed. In the anime, there's a filler scene where Usopp imagines Sugar turning Luffy into a toy, and the toy he becomes is actually the Luffy bomber from the Chopper Man Straw Hat Theater manga, a one-time minion of the evil Dr. Usodabada. And just as a little bonus fun fact, Chopper Man is one of those series that is published in a spin-off magazine that Luffy is not allowed to be on the cover of. But otherwise, this is a very beautiful synergy of like non-canon anime material referencing non-canon manga material. However, when it comes to Luffy, non-canon anime material is not to be taken lightly because it has now predicted the future on two separate occasions. The first of which was the Warship Island arc, where Luffy could hear the voices of animals, which he can now actually sort of do thanks to the voice of all things. And the second was when Luffy became a giant during Zed's ambition arc. More accurately, a giant that could make herself smaller inserted herself in the body of Luffy, then made herself bigger and kind of like wore Luffy as a skin. It was really trippy. Much like the two times that Luffy has now met Goku from Dragon Ball. The first was during a manga collaboration with Akira Toriyama entitled Cross Epoch, while the second was an anime episode crossover with both Dragon Ball and Toriko. So another really weird bonus fact, that was episode 590. And it is quite literally the only anime episode out of over 1,000 now which has never been released on home video. I don't know why. I also don't know why Luffy has never been sick, but he claims never to have fallen ill and can't really conceive of the feeling. Not even when he practically gave himself food poisoning by trying to cook his own meal on the way to Whole Cake Island. This may also have something to do with the next fact, which is that Nami claims Luffy is omnivorous to the point where he will even eat non-food objects. There's even a famous fan edit of a color.
So this man Luffy eating rocks?
Spread where Luffy proves this exact point by eating Nami's.
Hey! Nah. I know, boy. I know these One Piece fans were drooling when they see this.
To the best of my knowledge, there is only one thing in this world that Luffy just flat out will not eat, and that is cherry pie.
Luffy about that life.
Luffy even eats ice, which is somewhat controversial, because there is something of a civil war amongst the Straw Hats between those who eat ice and those who don't, also known as those who eat ice and those who are wrong. Luffy does have one rather wrong and disgusting habit though, which is wiping his boogers, very specifically on Usopp, which you can see happen in the background of chapter 604. Luffy picks his nose, wipes it on Usopp, and there it remains, potentially.
Usopp should have slapped the mess out of Luffy.
Luffy also shares a lot of common interests with Usopp, particularly when it comes to beetles. This intense fascination was flagged during Jaya, where Luffy had multiple beetle-based encounters, and can be seen as recently as chapter 1067, with Luffy proudly presenting a stag beetle to a horrified jewelry Bonnie. And just prior to this, Bonnie had transformed Luffy into an old man. And that old man is actually an alternate universe Luffy who resides in what we know as the bad timeline. The one where everything went tragically wrong and he gave up on his dreams. For the sake of balance though, there is also an alternate universe good timeline, where at age 60, a very, very accomplished Luffy evolved into his final form, becoming the spitting image of his
future Luffy? Nah, he won't look like this. I feel like if I'm thinking about an adult Luffy, he probably looks similar to Shanks, like his build.
Grandfather, Monkey D. Garp. Garp being one of 3 people in this world who Luffy shows a genuine fear towards, the other 2 being Ace and Nami, all of whom can and will utterly destroy Luffy if he angers them. I suppose Ace can't do it so much anymore, but the Nami and Garp, they can still do it. Otherwise, it's very rare for Luffy to show fear, not even towards the Emperors of the Sea. Be it Whitebeard, Kaido, or Blackbeard, Luffy generally remains quite calm. Well, with one exception. Currently, the only Emperor of the Sea to invoke terror in Luffy was Big Mama Udon, where he was quite genuinely scared to see her rock up. Going a step down the hierarchy though, when it comes to the warlords, Luffy doesn't fear them at all. In fact, he has this very strict love-hate relationship with most of them. Of the 11-7 warlords, Luffy has defeated 3, made allies of 5, and has made one very special, how shall we say, intimate alliance with one. Although it's a very one-way special intimate alliance. Because Luffy is a serial friend zoner with no interest in romance whatsoever. Which is crazy because this man has met so many princesses that he could go on to found Disney, and yet not a modicum of attraction. Again though,
he's gonna get a girl at the end
on
of the
occasion,
series,
Luffy has been peer pressured into attraction. Once when Bon Clay exposed himself in Nami's body, and once when Nami exposed herself in Nami's body in the baths of Alabasta. However, the official explanation for this is Luffy was just imitating Usopp, which seems a bit odd to me, but then again, Luffy is well known for his over-the-top reactions. I mean, get this one time he overthrew an entire monarchy just because a girl gave him lunch. Also because of law, but like mostly for the lunch. A reader also once asked if Luffy would cheat in rock, paper, scissors against Law and Kid by using his future sight. However, Oda responded that no, he would not. He then added that they would all get into a fight no matter what, but an honest fight at least, which is something that Luffy does not expect from his opponents. As a pirate, he always accepts when an opponent deceives him or performs some kind of underhanded tactic, because Luffy has this beautiful philosophy of, yeah, it's a fight between pirates, of course you're gonna do all kinds of scummy crap to me. The result of many of these fights has led to a bit of a misconception though surrounding why Luffy doesn't kill his opponents. A common answer is because he wants to crush their dreams instead, a punishment even worse than death. And while that is partially true, it makes Luffy sound like more of a sadist than he actually is, which is very little. To someone like Luffy, losing your dream is the equivalent of death, so taking his opponent's dreams away is seen as punishment enough. With all of this said, Luffy is far from the most morally upstanding individual, unless you watch the 4Kids version, that is. There's a scene early on where Kobe pleads with Luffy not to hit him. Please don't hit me, Mr. Luffy. I don't like the hitting. Now in the original, Luffy just gives him a smack anyway and goes on to say that I don't like you, Kobe, you are a coward. Whereas in the 4Kids dub, the hit is removed and Luffy says something like, what? I wasn't going to hit you. People shouldn't hit you. That's bad. Which goes against the entire Luffy-Kobe relationship. Because here is a super obscure fact, but every time that Luffy and Kobe meet, Kobe gets punched by Luffy. There was the first time during their initial meeting, then Luffy punches Kobe again on Water 7, as well as really thoroughly smacking him in the face at Marineford. At this point, it's just how Luffy says hello to Kobe. And look, a lot of Luffy's bad behavior may be attributed to the sheer amount of prison time that he's done in One Piece. Luffy has been caught or imprisoned on at least 19 separate occasions. At this point, it's actually rare for Luffy to go through an entire arc without being imprisoned. And naturally, posting all of that bail for Luffy gets pretty expensive, but that's not even close to the biggest crew expense, as the vast majority of their pirate, some earnings go directly towards feeding Luffy. And if you've ever wondered how you could become a Straw Hat, well, it's actually fairly simple. According to Databook Yellow, Luffy only considers 2 criteria, which are timing and his own intuition, which has served him well recruiting figures like Zoro, Nami, and Sanji, but has served him in a bit more questions.
So you basically gotta feel if you're gonna be a Straw Hat or something. You gotta have that feeling.
Questionably when extending invitations to figures such as Gaimon, Zombie Tree, and very specifically Gaimon's legs. It's very important to note that only his legs were asked to join the crew on Punk Hazard, although I do think that the entire body is welcome to join now. However, he would have to adhere to Luffy's strict crew hierarchy. Luffy has a system for ranking the crew, and he will almost always refer to them in the order in which they joined. So Zoro, Nami, Usopp, Sanji, etc., you know who the people are. But it actually gets quite funny sometimes because when referring to the crew as a whole, you will often hear the word Zorotachi, meaning Zoro and the rest. The connection to Zoro is quite appropriate though, because Luffy and Zoro grew up shockingly close together, on a separate island but within a very short sailing distance from one another, which we saw when Dragon sailed from Dawn Island and ended up almost immediately docking at Shimotsuki Village. Now look, this would not be a Luffy fun fact video if I didn't briefly touch on his man parts. That was a really bad way to phrase that, but one of the most essential things to know about Luffy is that Oda has confirmed that his Will of D does indeed
Hey, yo! Hey!
And according to the events of Amazon Lily, sometimes it even glows like a nice bright treasure. All I'll say is that the One Piece is real. Although Luffy himself doesn't even care if the One Piece is real or not. Despite his whole dream seemingly being tied to it, Luffy would be perfectly content if he arrived on Laugh Tale and there was absolutely nothing there. Which may be because that's not his true dream. Luffy actually shares a dream with the former Pirate King Goldie Roger. A dream that has yet to be revealed to us as readers and watchers, but it goes beyond simply finding the One Piece and becoming the Pirate King. It may even have something to do with the innate nature of Nika or Joy Boy, which recently revealed that Luffy's Devil Fruit wasn't what we thought it was for the past 20 years. Although the fruit was subject to misconception long before then, with the Gomu Gomu no Mi being mistranslated in English as the Gum Gum Fruit, whereas it should actually be the Rubber Rubber Fruit. However, it's suspected that Gum Gum was chosen because Rubber Rubber just doesn't really fit the anime mouth flips as well. Remembering that One Piece was picked up by 4Kids and then Viz just had to follow whatever 4Kids did. But whichever one it is, I just prefer saying Gomu, because Gomu is what Luffy is all about. His trademark number is 56, you'll see it on a lot of his clothing, because in Japanese 56 can be read as Gomu. And that is Gomu fun facts about Luffy that you may or may not have.
W Facts, W Liam, W Video.